Hello, folks. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Ed Sullivan, and I'm part of the add-ons community team. And I would like to introduce you to our Senior Developer Relations Engineer, Simeon Vincent, as he walks you through his presentation on pushing the boundaries of Firefox extensions. Simeon, over to you.
Thanks, Ed. And thank you all for joining us. As Ed said, my name is Simeon Vincent, and I'm a developer relations engineer working on Firefox add-ons. For those that aren't familiar, add-ons is a bit of an umbrella term. It covers several different kinds of software that Firefox can download and run after its initial installation. And there are a bunch of different kinds of add-ons, but the type that most people are familiar with, and what I primarily focus on, what we're going to be talking about today, are browser extensions. More specifically, we're going to take a look at some of the ways that you can push the boundaries of what's possible using a Firefox extension. We're going to take a look at some of the core features available across browsers. We're going to dive into some Firefox-specific behaviors and APIs. And then we're going to take a look at a deeper integration and ways that we can leverage those APIs to provide a more compelling user experience. So with that, let's get into it. First up, we have cross-browser features. At this point, Chrome, Firefox, and Safari have all adopted a common extension model that we commonly refer to as web extensions. As a result, when you build an extension for your main browser, you should be able to bring it to any of the other two without too much trouble. And we're working hard to collaborate with each other and make that experience even easier moving forward. We don't have time to cover everything that web extensions can do, or all of the pieces of them. So I want to take a quick look at 4 core concepts, core features to how extensions work and what makes it possible for them to be as useful as they are. We have background scripts, content scripts, actions, and commands. So let's start with the background script. The extension's background script is usually where the extension will set up its event listeners for various browser events and coordinate the rest of the extension's operations. Now, it's not strictly required to have a background, but generally speaking, as you build more and more complex extensions, you'll probably find yourself needing to wire multiple pieces together. That's where the background comes in. And here we have a beautiful little screenshot of a Firefox multi-account container, which we're going to be taking a closer look at later. The next kind of core concept in browser extension development is content scripts. Content scripts are JavaScript files that are bundled with the extension that can be injected into a website. They're extremely powerful because they give you direct access to read and modify the content of a page. They also allow you to pass data back to your background and to inject UI into the page and do a variety of things that are directly useful to the end user. The browser's action is probably the most common UI surface that users interact with. It is the button that appears in the toolbar or in the extension menu. Here we have uBlock Origins pop up. And the pop-up is what appears when you click the action by default. That you can change how that works. You can change it so it doesn't open a pop-up. It can execute whatever logic you want in your event listener. But it is an extremely common pattern to have a pop-up. And finally, my personal favorite, commands. While you're using an extension, it's possible for the developer to expose keyboard shortcuts that allow you to invoke extension functionality, either doing things like wiring it up directly to the browser action or exposing special behaviors that wouldn't otherwise be possible. Now, onto Firefox specific capabilities. Those are kind of, that's far from everything. There's so much that extensions can do, but those are some of the core surfaces and some of what we'll be playing into as we explore Firefox specific capabilities and ways that we can extend and enhance using features that only Firefox provides. First up is kind of a big one, the Contextual Identities API. Contextual identities are also known as containers, and they allow users to separate their accounts and identity as they browse the web. So, for example, one of a product that Mozilla came out with, a custom extension for Firefox, was a Facebook container that uses this technology to isolate your Facebook account into its own box. That way, as you're browsing the web, your Facebook login information isn't passed to the websites you visit, and it's harder to scrape data and make associations between your primary profile and that secondary one. Speaking of profiles, if you're familiar with profiles, this is similar, but one of the big differences is that in order to use a profile, you need to open a whole new browser session. So sometimes people use 2 different browsers for this purpose, but it's also possible to do it within the same browser. Firefox in particular, you can go to about:profiles and use that to create a new profile or switch to another one that exists. Containers are like profiles, except they all exist within the same single profile. So you can have these multiple different pieces. By default, the browser ships with 4 containers: personal, work, bank, and shopping. And you can customize using the, I already forgot the name of this extension, multi-account containers. You can customize multi-account containers to make it so every time you visit a shopping website, it will open in the shopping container and thereby keep your browsing activity more private, more restricted to you. Notably, this is a Firefox exclusive feature. No other browser implements this. And personally, I'm a little bit surprised because I think it's a pretty great piece of functionality. And I would encourage you to both consider using it and to consider integrating it into the extensions that you develop. Another Firefox-only API is the DNS API. Now, on the surface, DNS isn't necessarily the most interesting technology, but for privacy-focused extensions, this can be an incredibly useful tool. The features that the API provides, we'll get into a couple of the options in a moment, but they allow you to do some really interesting debugging and introspection into how DNS resolution works in the browser. But notably, NoScript and uBlock Origin both use the DNS API, and I think they in particular use it. I know for sure uBlock Origin uses it for CNAME masking, which is a technique that advertisers use to make it look like the network activity that they're performing is going to the host. For example, ad.example.com when you're visiting example.com. Since it's a subdomain, it looks like it's legit activity, but it is actually still performing all the same kind of tracking and data collection stuff that well, users aren't exactly fond of. The DNS API provides a decent number of parameters that you can pass into the resolve method. And I believe that's the only method that the DNS API exposes. But 3 notable ones that I wanted to call out just to give a hint at the type of functionality that you can experiment with here is if you pass offline true, then only literals and cache entities will be returned, meaning it won't actually perform the resolution. You can kind of introspect the contents of the DNS cache locally. Disable IPv4. If that's true, then you will only get IPv6, and reverse, disable IPv6, you will only get IPv4. So this allows you to start to debug and get into some of the lower level details about how your DNS resolution is taking place. And finally, disable TTR. TTR is Trusted Recursive Resolver, and that's the mechanism by which DNS over HTTPS works. So if you disable it, then you're also opting out of DNS over HTTPS. So that can again be useful if you're encountering unexpected errors. This type of thing, in addition to being a useful tool for privacy-concerned extensions and utilities, it's also great if you work on the web, like many of us do. The theme API. No other browser has this. It is an API that allows you to read and write theme settings. So this enables you to do some interesting and cool things, like dynamically respond to, say, the weather in your local city and have your browser UI update to reflect the current status. So rain clouds or sunshine, you can see that directly in your web browser. I've also seen temperature reports done with this kind of thing. Another utility, at a certain time of day, your system can flip from light mode to dark mode, assuming your OS doesn't already provide that kind of functionality. There's a variety of things that you can do. Another one that I saw was having the browser UI update to reflect the color theme of the site that you're visiting. So that makes it kind of more engaging. It brings the browser Chrome, that is the UI of the web browser, into the experience of the content being shown. Next, we have the Sidebar Action API in Firefox. Now, Sidebar Action has been, I think, a bit recently, it's been overshadowed. The Chrome has taken some of the limelight on having some content on the side of your web browser, but we've had this longer. Actually, the Firefox version was taken, it was inspired by Opera, who implemented the original Sidebar Action API, and then we added it. Notably, though, the Sidebar Action API has a slightly different set of behaviors than Chrome's side panel. In particular, Sidebar Action has a single sidebar per window. Chrome's side panel allows you to have per website side panels, and there's some complicated behavior on what content gets swapped in and all of that. So the other thing to note is when you close a side panel, that the side panel is destroyed, much like closing a web page. So that content is gone, and whatever state, if it wasn't persisted, is potentially lost. And finally, a notable aspect of the Sidebar Action API, in order to open or close the sidebar, a user has to perform an action. That action could be clicking on the browser action, for example, clicking the icon in the toolbar. That could be a meaningful trigger to toggle the state of the sidebar, or the user may directly interact with the browser UI in order to open or close it. Search API. So Firefox supports an API that allows you to interact with the registered search engines in your web browser. Chrome has a similar API, but the Firefox provides a superset. So Chrome only supports the search query method, or the longer name would be chrome.search.query, and then you pass in the text that you want to perform a query on. This is notably different in Firefox because in addition to query, we also provide get and search, search.search. So browser.search.get, browser.search.search. And those are kind of interesting because while the Chrome approach it only defers to the user's default search provider, the Firefox approach allows extensions to show a set of different search providers and choose which one is more appropriate for the context, or critically, to give the user the choice to decide which one they want to use. Page Action API. So this is an API that existed for a long time in Manifest v2, but when Chrome adopted Manifest v3 and made that the default, they deprecated the Page Action API. That's notable because this is actually kind of a cool bit of functionality. The icon appears in the browser URL, in the URL bar, and it is only when contextually appropriate. So, for example, one of my first extensions was for the chat client or the chat service Getter. And if I detected that you were visiting a page, a GitHub page that had a Getter room, then I would display the Getter link in the URL so you'd be able to open it. And since this was only on a couple web pages, like a small percentage of all of the web traffic that you're going to be doing over the course of the day, I didn't want it to be in the toolbar all the time, so I wanted it to be a page action. This is a really cool bit of functionality that Firefox continues to support, even though Chrome does not. It is also, I should note, available in Safari. And finally, the Find API. This API allows you to search for a string on the current page or any tab that the user has open, and to highlight instances of that text. The API also gives you the ability to see, by default, when you perform a find action, you will get the number of results on the page, but you can choose to highlight the matches, or in the initial find call, you can provide some additional parameters to be able to find exactly where in the document those ranges are that were matched. And that's cool because it allows you to do some interesting and clever things with the content of the page. For example, if you find a relevant term, you can grab, say, the paragraph that term was in order to have automatically collect a quote for a research extension. Like an extension that is facilitating research could do this broader crawling and data collection for you in order to help set you up that when you're actually writing your paper, now you have the context that you need to meaningfully use the quotation. And next, we have some of the ways that you can interact more deeply with the Firefox user experience. There's so much that can be done with the APIs we just discussed, and I wish I had time to go into more detail with them, but I just have a handful of cases that I want to highlight and talk about how these features can be used to enhance and extend your experience to make a better browser extension. First, and possibly my favorite, is matching the browser's theme. Using the theme API, you can not only update the theme of the current browser, update the theme of the browser, you can also get the current theme settings. That way, your user interface that you expose can match the look and feel that the user has chosen for their web browser. And this one I really want to encourage because it just feels different when you're browsing the web and the experience that is exposed is consistent and nice. So on the left here, we have what a sidebar might look like without any special styling. It's a basic HTML page, and it has just the default white background, black text. On the right, we have I'm trying to remember what the CSS for this is. Dark mode? No. I don't remember. So all we've done here on the right is set the minimum CSS in order to inherit the user's preference of dark, light, or dark. And as you can see, now the content of the sidebar, the dark background color matches the default dark background color of Firefox's internal settings pages and similar. But when we take a look at, say, the history sidebar, this is a part of Firefox. It ships with the browser, and it inherits colors from the theme. It's got a light blue text, light blue background. It looks and feels like it belongs to the broader browser Chrome, the browser UI. This is what I was looking for before. Color scheme, light, dark. That's the part that I was missing. And we can do this too by reading the current theme settings and then applying them to our style sheet dynamically using JavaScript. Now, it's also worth calling out that this isn't possible in any other browser because they don't have the themes API. They don't allow you to perform this kind of management or introspection of the user's current browser environment. And in addition to the sidebar, you can also do this kind of styling with the page action, the options page. Your options are, there's a lot that you could do to make your experience feel at home in the user's browser. Next, I want to take a look at the search API. The main suggestion that I would have here is if you are providing an experience in your extension that allows the user to query a search engine, being able to query against the default is great, but it is even better if you're able to, say, open a picker and choose which experience you want. So, for example, this is my mockup of Firefox's new tab page, and I've added this little drop-down icon just to the right of the Google, a little small chevron pointing downward. In this case, if you click it, you should be able to get a list of all of the different web search engines that the user currently has installed and display them in a menu. And then using the previously mentioned search.search method, we can perform a search on a specific search engine. Again, embracing what the user's settings are and integrating them into your experience to keep them in control and give them a more robust experience than just a static flat page with a text box on it. And finally, I would encourage you to embrace contextual identities. Even if you don't necessarily have features that you think would be like a super good fit for integrating with the experience, just being able to allow the user to choose whether or not the extension runs in a contextual identity is super helpful, because much in the way that we were talking about the isolation properties of those containers, it is possible that the extensions that you have installed are also fingerprinting vectors. So if you can get yourself out of the experience when the user doesn't want you there, then that helps protect them and gives them a better experience, keeps them in control, and ultimately leads to happier users that are more likely to recommend their experiences. like to wrap up with a couple of different resources that you all can check out. We have the Firefox web extension documentation available at extensionworkshop.com. WebExt is a command line interface tool that helps you build extensions, has auto reloading features, and just generally makes it easier, especially if you're submitting to the addons.mozilla.org. But even if you're a Chrome extension developer, I would recommend giving it a look. If you have questions or want to talk more about extension development, we have two great resources. First, the middle one, we have a discourse server and on a specific add-ons section. And also we have a matrix server. Mozilla uses matrix for a lot of IRC style communication. And folks hang out there. You are welcome to ping me and I'll do my best to check in and answer any questions that come up. And finally, stay up to date. Check out the Mozilla add-ons blog, where we're working on putting out content that will help you all be better extension developers, useful guidance and tools and interviews and all of that. So I think that's it. I want to kick it back to Ed.
Thank you so much, Simeon. Great presentation. There wasn't a ton of questions throughout, but I did pull out a couple that I will now give to you. I think the one question that I saw was, is everything you discussed today currently available?
Everything I discussed today is currently available, yes. When I was preparing for this talk, I was writing a lot of Manifest v3 extensions. There's a quick caveat I want to share with Manifest v3. I was going to say currently host permissions are restricted by default. I think that may have changed. Ed, do you happen to know what release we're on for Firefox?
Yeah, I believe 127 just dropped 2 days ago. So
Perfect.
I think you're correct.
Because 127 is the one that contained the fix for the host permission grants. So Manifest v3 should now behave like Manifest v2 did, where host permissions are granted at installation time. So at this point, I don't have any reason to recommend not embracing Manifest v3.
Excellent. And a question that I'm sure you probably don't have an answer to, will we see full Firefox on iPad?
I wish I knew the answer to that. I will say I certainly hope so, but I can't answer that. I am a fan that is looking forward to it as much as you are.
Yeah, and just for clarity, both Simeon and I are specifically focused on our add-ons community and add-ons developers. So things like roadmap for full Firefox support on iPad is probably a bit out of our scope, sadly.
Unfortunately, even things like the future feature set of Android extensions is also a bit outside of our scope. Because that is Android specific, there's a dedicated team for that.
I'm not seeing any additional questions.
Great. We did
so with that, maybe we will wrap up. Any final words, Simeon?
Yeah, extensions are cool and you should build them. Scratch your own itch. That is, I think, the best way to get started. If there is a thing that you wish a website that you use every day did, you can make it do it. And extensions are the way to do it.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Simeon. Folks, we have our Twitter account that I will be posting the recording and slides to, but I also believe whichever platform you're currently joining us on now will automatically turn into the recording URL. One last quick questions we have, Simeon, that's a personal question. What's the best extensions that we use?
I'm partial to tree style tabs. I don't always have it enabled because I know it has a lot of options that I really need to dig into to tweak its behavior, but there are some times when it gets a little annoying, and I haven't yet invested the time to figure out how to make it do exactly what I want. I think uBlock Origin is a crowd favorite. It's hard to say no to. And I one other one that's a little bit weird that I'm partial to is now I'm gotta find my about add-ons page. Link to text fragment. Text fragments are a web feature that allow you to link to a specific piece of text in a web page as opposed to like an anchor or an ID in a document. So you can like pull out the exact sentence that you want to reference and link directly to that. And link to text fragment is an extension that adds that functionality to Firefox.
Very cool. I'd say for myself, it's not super exciting, but the 1Password extension I find very helpful. I'm one of those people that always struggles with passwords, remembering them. I'm guilty of writing them down. So the 1Password extension is a favorite of mine. And as Simeon mentioned, uBlock. And for me, uBlock on Android specifically, I don't know other people's opinions, but I find the mobile web almost unusable without an ad blocker. All right, I think we're going to wrap it up to today. Simeon, thank you for your time.
My pleasure.
Everyone who joined us, thank you for joining us today. And we'll be back in the next month or two with another cool presentation for folks. So thank you again, and I hope everyone has a great rest of their day.
Take care.